Her speech was beautiful. Not polished in that fake, rehearsed way adults like to praise. Real. Honest. The kind of speech that trembles a little because the person giving it actually means every word. She talked about resilience, teachers who stayed late, friends who became family, the strange intimacy of surviving adolescence beside the same people every day. Then she said, "The people who loved us first taught us what showing up means." I knew she meant her father. For 1 second, grief and pride occupied the exact same space in my chest. Then she looked directly at me. "And I want to thank my mom," she said, her voice shaking, "who never missed a single thing that mattered." The crowd erupted. Applause everywhere. People standing. Programs waving in the heat. And I cried without dignity, without caring who saw. Because if you've spent years holding yourself together for someone else, sometimes joy breaks you faster than pain. Then Grant leaned toward me and whispered, "I'm not clapping for her. She's not even my kid." For a second, I genuinely thought I had misheard him. Then I saw the woman beside us turn her head. "Number," I heard him correctly. Grant sat there with his arms folded while hundreds of strangers stood applauding my daughter. It's a strange thing when someone destroys years of carefully managed illusion in a single sentence. You don't feel confusion first. You feel clarity. I looked at him. My voice came out calmer than I felt. "Then leave." He blinked. "No, leave. I have every right to be here." I held his gaze. "You have every right to sit here," I said quietly. "You just chose not to be a decent human being while doing it." His jaw tightened. "You can't make me." Lily's speech was ending. She was stepping back from the podium with tears in her eyes. The applause was still rolling across the field, and the man sitting beside me had chosen that exact moment to make something beautiful about himself. That told me everything I needed to know. So I stood. Grant looked up, startled. I leaned closer and said, low enough that only he could hear, "You can walk out with me now, or we can continue this after, but you are not sitting next to me for the rest of my daughter's graduation." Maybe it was something in my face. Maybe some people only recognize boundaries when they finally stop sounding negotiable. He stood. We walked down the bleachers while applause still echoed behind us. A few people noticed. I truly did not care. In the parking lot, he hissed, "You're embarrassing me." I pulled out my phone and opened Uber. "You handled that yourself. You always choose her over me." I looked at him, and what struck me most wasn't anger. It was the sheer absurdity, as if choosing your child over cruelty were some kind of character flaw. "No," I said, "I choose decency over cruelty. That just happens to include my daughter." The Uber arrived a few minutes later. He stared at the car, then at me. "You're seriously putting me in an Uber like I'm some stranger?" I held his gaze. "You called my daughter one first." That landed. I saw it. Not remorse. Just offense. He got in, slammed the door, and the car pulled away. I stood there for a moment in the heat, breathing hard. Not because I regretted it. Because some endings happen before you're emotionally ready to admit they've happened. Then I walked back into the stadium alone. Sat down. And clapped so hard when Lily crossed that stage my palms stung afterward. After the ceremony, she ran straight to me. Not walked. Ran. Threw her arms around me with her whole body the way kids do before they start pretending they're too grown for that. "Where's Grant?" I smoothed her hair. Lied immediately. "He wasn't feeling well. He went home." She looked at me for half a beat. Long enough to let me know she understood more than I wanted her to. Children are often far more emotionally literate than adults give them credit for. But she didn't push. She just smiled weakly and said, "Can we get ice cream?" So we got ice cream. She ordered the largest size available, like academic excellence had finally earned her legal authority. We sat in the car with the AC blasting while she told me about almost dropping her index cards, someone stepping on her gown, her voice shaking during paragraph 2. Tiny things. Normal things. Beautifully normal things. For one precious hour, I let her keep the day she deserved. No conflict. No adult ugliness. Just celebration. But the second I pulled into the driveway and saw Grant's car already there, I knew the ceremony had not been the climax. It had only been the opening scene. When Lily and I walked in, Grant was already home. Sitting at the kitchen table, exactly where I'd left my keys that morning, hands folded in front of him, a half-empty glass of water beside him like he'd been rehearsing for this. His eyes were red. Not heartbreak red. Anger red. There's a difference. One comes from pain. The other comes from wounded entitlement. Lily's gaze moved between us instantly. Children can sense emotional weather faster than adults admit. I forced a smile I did not feel. "Why don't you head upstairs? Change. Relax. I'll come up in a little while." She hesitated. That hesitation broke something in me a little, because it meant she already knew this was bigger than an awkward evening. But she nodded and went upstairs. The moment I heard her bedroom door shut, Grant stood. What the hell was that? I set my purse down carefully. Not because I was calm. Because if I moved too fast, I might say something irreversible. What exactly are you referring to? Oh, don't do that. He gave a sharp, humorless laugh. You humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. I looked at him. It was remarkable how quickly cruel people rewrite stories, yet it's when they become the ones facing consequences. Interesting interpretation. Interpretation? He snapped. You physically removed me from a public event. I asked you to leave after you refused to applaud my daughter. That was a private comment. No, I said evenly. A private comment is one no one else hears. The woman next to us heard you. He scoffed. That's not the point. It is exactly the point. He started pacing. I'm so sick of this. This. He gestured wildly around the kitchen, as if the entire house had personally offended him. Always being second. Always being the outsider in my own relationship. I crossed my arms. Grant, you chose my daughter's graduation to make a cruel point. You're proving me right. I stared at him. That sentence doesn't even make sense. To you. He pointed toward the stairs. Because everything revolves around her. And there it was. Not concern. Not insecurity disguised as vulnerability. Just jealousy. Raw, ugly, embarrassingly obvious jealousy. I had seen hints of it before. But some truths do not fully reveal themselves until they stop pretending to be polite. She is my daughter. She's 18. And? She's an adult. Today, I said. Today she graduated. He threw up his hands. Oh my God, you act like she cured cancer. I laughed. Not kindly. No. She became valedictorian after years of hard work while carrying grief most adults don't handle well. He stared at me. Then I watched the shift happen. The familiar pivot. From aggressor to victim. You never made me feel like family. I almost laughed again. Not because it was funny. Because the audacity was breathtaking. Excuse me? I've spent years trying to be part of this family, and no matter what I do, I'm always outside it. Name one time Lily excluded you. He paused. Too long. Then shrugged. That's not the point. Then what is? He exhaled dramatically. Feelings. That word landed exactly how he intended. Because people love hiding bad behavior behind emotional vocabulary. I feel unwanted. I feel invisible. I feel like a third wheel. He said it like emotional language automatically erased accountability. I let him finish, then said quietly, Your feelings are real. They are not permission. His jaw clenched. What's that supposed to mean? It means insecurity is not a free pass to punish an 18-year-old. He stared at me like I had slapped him. Then he grabbed his phone and walked off. That night, he slept in the guest room. I thought maybe distance would cool things down. That was optimistic. The next morning, he barely spoke. The day after that, even less. Then his mother called me at work. I was in a budget review meeting when my phone lit up with an unknown number. I ignored it. Then she left a voicemail. I stepped into the hallway to listen and regretted it almost immediately. Marissa, this is Diane, Grant's mother. I need you to understand how disturbing your behavior was. My son says you dragged him out of a public event and threw him into a car like some criminal. That is abusive, controlling behavior. Frankly, I'm horrified. Then came the line that made my hand tighten around the phone. You've spent years choosing another man's child over your relationship. Another man's child. It takes a certain kind of ugliness to describe a grieving daughter that way. As if Lily were some leftover inconvenience. As if widowhood somehow diluted motherhood. I saved the voicemail. Not because I had a strategy yet. Because instinct told me not to delete evidence when people start revealing themselves. That same evening, Grant acted almost normal. Too normal. Made dinner. Asked if I wanted pasta. Smiled with that careful, controlled expression people wear when they care more about restoring optics than repairing damage. For a brief, foolish second, I wondered whether things might calm down. Then 3 days later, Lily called me at work. I knew something was wrong before I answered. Mothers know. Sometimes not logically. Just physically. Her breathing was too quiet. Mom? That one word cracked. I stood so fast my chair rolled backward. What happened? Silence. Then, did I do something? My blood went cold. What? Grant said. Her voice disappeared. I heard the effort it took not to cry. That fragile, careful kind of restraint that hurts more than sobbing. Grant said if I'd been less clingy with you, maybe your relationship wouldn't be falling apart. Everything inside me went cold. Not angry yet. Cold. The kind of cold that comes when your body recognizes danger before your mind catches up. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I barely remember telling my assistant I was leaving. I only remember driving home with my hands locked around the steering wheel so tightly they hurt. 23 minutes. It felt like crossing a war zone inside my own head. And when I walked through that front door and saw Grant casually cooking in my kitchen like he hadn't just poured poison into my daughter's heart, something in me changed. I stood in the doorway. "Did you tell Lily our relationship problems were her fault?" He didn't even turn around, just kept stirring whatever was in the pan like we were discussing grocery lists. I told her the truth. That calmness was somehow worse than yelling. Anger can be impulsive. Calm cruelty is deliberate. I stepped closer. "She is 18. Yes. She lost her father. Yes. And while I was at work, you sat my daughter down and blamed her for adult relationship problems." Finally, he turned. No shame. No discomfort. Just cold irritation, like I was the unreasonable one for objecting. Someone needed to say it. I stared at him. There are moments when the person in front of you becomes emotionally unfamiliar so quickly it feels physically disorienting. "Are you hearing yourself?" He shrugged. "She babies you." I let out a short laugh. The kind that comes when reality becomes too absurd to process politely. "No, try again. You're obsessed with protecting her. She is my child. She manipulates you." And something inside me became perfectly still. Not explosive rage, not tears. Stillness. The dangerous kind. Because anger can still negotiate. Clarity does not. I looked at him and said, "I want you to move out." He blinked. "What?" "You heard me." Then he laughed. Actually laughed. "Marissa, this is my home." "No," I said. "You live here. That's not the same thing." His expression hardened instantly. "Wow. The house is mine. We've been together 5 years." "Yes." "You think you can just throw me out?" I took a slow breath. Because emotional satisfaction and legal reality are rarely the same thing. "No, I understand it's more complicated than changing locks and tossing your bags outside." "Good. But I am asking you to leave voluntarily." His eyes narrowed. Then he said the sentence that ended whatever part of me had still been hoping this was salvageable. "If anyone should leave, it's Lily." The room went so quiet I could hear the stove clicking behind him. "She's 18, he continued. "She can move into a dorm early. Why should I lose my home because she can't let go?" I just stared at him, not shocked. Shock had passed. This was something else. Recognition. Sometimes the end of a relationship isn't the fight. It's the moment you finally see exactly who has been standing in front of you the whole time. "You think my daughter should leave her own home?" I said slowly. "So the man who emotionally attacked her gets to stay?" "You twist everything." "No," I said. "I think this is the first time I'm not." He folded his arms. "I'm not going anywhere." I nodded once. Because I understood now. This was no longer a relationship argument. This was a legal problem wearing the clothes of a breakup. And Grant had made the mistake of assuming I was still emotionally negotiating. I walked upstairs. Lily was sitting on her bed with her knees pulled to her chest. Her eyes were swollen. That sight alone made me want to go back downstairs and break something expensive. Instead, I sat beside her. "I'm so sorry." She looked at me carefully. "Is it true?" My throat tightened. "What?" "That I made things harder for you." That question. God. Children will carry blame adults should be ashamed to even suggest. I took her face gently in both hands. "Listen to me very carefully." She nodded. "None of this is your fault." Her lip trembled. "None of it." Then she cried. Not quiet tears. Real crying. The kind she usually tried to hide because she hated worrying me. I held her until her breathing steadied. And while I sat there with my daughter in my arms, something inside me settled into certainty. Love can survive hardship. Respect can survive conflict. But the moment someone weaponizes your child to wound you, something fundamental dies. The next morning, I called a lawyer. The lawyer's office smelled like burnt coffee and warm printer toner. Strange what the brain remembers when everything important feels too sharp to hold directly. His name was Daniel Reeves. Mid-50s, crisp gray suit, calm voice. The kind of man who looked like he had spent years dismantling ugly situations without ever needing to raise his tone. I explained everything. The graduation. Grant's comment. Him blaming Lily. The demand that my daughter leave her own home. Daniel listened without interrupting, which somehow made me speak more honestly than I expected. When I finished, he folded his hands. Legally, you cannot simply change the locks and force him out overnight. I nodded. I had already suspected that. Pain does not override property law, unfortunately. But, he said, that one word mattered more than the entire sentence before it. The house was purchased before the relationship? Yes. Only your name on ownership? Yes. No shared refinancing? No. No commingled ownership? No. He leaned back slightly. That helps. I exhaled for what felt like the first time all morning. What about Lily's college fund? Established before the relationship? Yes. Funded solely by you? Yes. Then it's likely protected. Likely. Not guaranteed, but enough to let my pulse settle a little. Then came the practical inventory of damage. Joint savings. Shared furniture. The used Honda Grant drove that I had helped co-sign for years earlier when his credit was weaker. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing painless either. That's adulthood in a sentence, really. You survive things that cost more than they should. Then Daniel asked, "Do you want to save this relationship?" The question hit harder than I expected. Because 2 months earlier, I might have said yes. Even a month earlier. Maybe even graduation morning. But now? I pictured Lily asking if she had ruined my life. And something in me answered before I consciously did. No. Daniel nodded, like that answer had been visible on my face the entire time. Then document everything. Everything? Texts, calls, voicemails, dates, conversations, anything relevant. I frowned. You think it'll escalate? He held my gaze. People who lose emotional control often look for other forms of leverage. That sentence stayed with me. 3 days later, Grant was served. If you're imagining some dramatic movie moment, it wasn't that. No shouting in a restaurant. No papers slapped onto a windshield. A process server walked up to Diane's front door while Grant was having dinner there, handed him an envelope, and left. Clean, efficient, almost boring. 22 minutes later, Diane called me, screaming. I held the phone away from my ear. You selfish witch! Interesting greeting. How dare you ambush my son? It's called legal process. He loved you. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because certain lies become absurd once spoken aloud. Did he? You're destroying a family. That word. Family. Convenient timing for that sentiment. I said calmly. Your son told my daughter she was the reason our relationship failed. Silence. Just long enough to suggest she understood exactly how bad that sounded. Then, well, maybe she was. I hung up immediately. Didn't block her. Saved the call record. Daniel had been right. Documentation matters. A week later, Grant's attorney sent the first formal demands. Half the house. Access to Lily's college fund. Financial support. Relocation expenses. I read the letter twice because I genuinely thought I had misunderstood it the first time. Daniel barely reacted. This is aggressive positioning. Meaning? They ask for absurd terms so later compromises feel reasonable. Will it work? No. That single word was deeply satisfying. Briefly. Because when some people lose legally, they don't reflect. They escalate. The first text came to Lily late Thursday night. I always tried to love you. Then, your mom is throwing me away. Then, one day she'll do this to you too. Manipulation wrapped in vulnerability. Classic. Lily handed me her phone without commentary. Should I answer? No. She nodded and handed it over. Thought so. Smart girl. Too smart for 18. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Daniel. Then the social version began. Friends we hadn't heard from in months suddenly checking in. Casual invitations for coffee. Concerned voices. The kind of vague politeness people use when they're actually fishing for gossip. Apparently, Grant's version was that I had ended the relationship because he set a healthy boundary at graduation. A healthy boundary. I nearly laughed out loud. Apparently, refusing to applaud an 18-year-old valedictorian was now self-care. Some people believed him. Some didn't. One mutual friend asked me directly, "Did he really blame Lily?" Yes. Her entire face changed. Some truths do that. Once a person weaponizes a child, neutrality starts looking a lot like cowardice. Then Daniel called one afternoon. Did Grant ever mention an ex? I frowned. What? An ex-girlfriend, Tessa. The name meant absolutely nothing to me. No, why? He paused. Someone contacted his attorney expressing concern about your emotional stability. I went cold. What? She described you as controlling, emotionally intense, unable to tolerate boundaries. I laughed. A sharp, disbelieving laugh. Not because it was funny. Because the audacity was almost artistic. His ex-girlfriend is making character statements about me? Indirectly, yes. I sat down hard. You're kidding. No. I rubbed my forehead. Did he reconnect with her? Unknown. That should have felt irrelevant. It didn't, because suddenly certain details clicked. Late-night texting. His phone face down. That emotional distance before graduation. I didn't have proof. But instinct has a way of getting louder once denial leaves the room. That night, I asked him directly, "Are you talking to Tessa?" He looked amused. Who? Don't do that. That smile. That infuriating, polished little smile. This is what you do, he said. You invent stories. I stepped closer. Answer the question. She's an old friend. Of course. Always an old friend. Are you involved with her? No. Too quick. Too smooth. Maybe true. Maybe not. At that point, honestly, the betrayal barely mattered. Lily mattered. And then Saturday morning came. 9:12 a.m. Doorbell. I opened the door. A professionally dressed woman stood there holding a folder. Marissa Bennett? Yes. Police department. We're here for a welfare check. And the floor disappeared beneath me. I have never forgotten the feeling of seeing that badge. Not fear at first, something stranger. Like my brain refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. A welfare check? The woman nodded politely. Yes, ma'am. We received a report and need to ask a few questions. My heart dropped so hard it physically hurt. For one awful second, I thought something had happened to Lily. An accident. A school incident. A call I somehow missed. Then the woman continued. Concerns were raised regarding emotional instability in the home. And I knew, instantly. Grant. I knew before another word was spoken. Because the language gave him away. Emotional instability. Unhealthy dependency. Conflict-centered parenting. Those were his phrases. His favorite therapy article vocabulary. The kind people use when they want cruelty to sound clinical. Knowing it was him did not make it less terrifying. May I come in? I stepped aside automatically. Politeness. Shock. Pure instinct. All at once. Officer Mitchell was calm, professional, efficient, which somehow made everything worse. If she had looked accusatory, I could have been angry. Instead, she looked like a woman simply doing her job. And suddenly I felt like I needed to prove I deserved my own life. Lily came downstairs halfway through introductions. The second she saw Officer Mitchell, she froze. That expression on her face nearly shattered me. Fear. Confusion. The kind no child should feel inside her own home. Officer Mitchell softened her tone. Hi, Lily, I just need to ask a few questions. Lily looked at me. I forced calm into my voice. It's okay. I was lying. Officer Mitchell spoke to us separately. Questions about the home. Discipline. Conflict. Whether Lily felt pressured. Unsafe. Controlled. Manipulated. Every question felt invasive in a way that's difficult to explain unless you've lived it. Not because the questions were inappropriate, because the implication behind them was unbearable. When institutions begin asking whether you are the danger, logic leaves the room. Officer Mitchell asked to speak with Lily alone. That 20 minutes felt endless. I sat at my own kitchen table, staring at the wood grain like it contained answers. My mind built nightmare scenarios faster than reason could dismantle them. That's what fear does. It does not ask whether your panic is rational. It simply floods everything. Finally, Officer Mitchell came downstairs, closed her folder. Thank you for your cooperation. I stared at her. That's it? She nodded. There are no concerns here. I nearly collapsed. The case? It will be closed. I exhaled so hard it almost hurt. Then she added professionally but kindly, Your daughter was very clear about how safe and loved she feels here. That sentence nearly broke me in front of a government employee. After she left, Lily came downstairs slowly. I crossed the room and pulled her into my arms before either of us said a word. I'm so sorry. She hugged me tightly. Mom? Yeah? That was him, wasn't it? I closed my eyes. Yes. She went quiet. Then said, That's insane. Yes, it was. But insanity becomes dangerous when it learns paperwork. I called Daniel immediately. He answered on the second ring. Tell me everything. I did. Silence. Then, that helps us. I stared at the wall. Are you serious? Yes. Daniel, police just conducted a welfare check at my house. And now we have documented retaliatory escalation. I understood what he meant. I still hated hearing it. Because strategy does not erase trauma. Send me everything, he said. Everything? Incident number, officer name, notes, anything. Okay. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time. Then the anger arrived. Not explosive anger. Not emotional chaos. Something cleaner. Colder. More dangerous. Because jealousy is ugly. Cruelty is worse. But weaponizing the system against a mother and her child? That changes the category entirely. That night, Grant called. I almost ignored it. Almost. But I wanted to hear his voice. Hello? His tone was casual. Far too casual. How are you? I laughed once. Sharp. Disbelieving. Really? Pause. What? A welfare officer came to my house today. Silence. Then, what? Terrible acting. Actually insulting. Don't. Marissa, what are you talking about? I shut my eyes. Do not insult my intelligence. Are you accusing me? Yes. That's ridiculous. Is it? Absolutely. Then came the predictable pivot. How dare you think I'd do something like that? The guilty often love outrage. It creates smoke where facts should be. I didn't argue. I just said, if I find proof, everything changes. Silence. Then his tone changed. Colder. You already destroyed everything. No, I said, you did. And I hung up. Later that week, my insurance company called. Apparently, Grant had been asking questions about policy continuity. Interesting timing. The Honda he drove was still partially tied to my insurance. Daniel's advice was immediate. Separate every legal financial connection you can. So I did. Insurance, streaming accounts, emergency contacts, cloud access. All the tiny threads people forget exist until separation turns hostile. I handled it professionally, cleanly, documented. Grant lost his mind. 7 calls in one evening. Then texts. How am I supposed to get to work? I replied, that is no longer my responsibility. He sent, unbelievable, number, entirely believable. Then mutual friends started shifting. Because ugly behavior gets harder to defend when patterns emerge. One woman from old dinner parties called me quietly. Did he really call the police on you? I paused. Yes. Long silence. Then, oh my God. That was the beginning of the social unraveling. Meanwhile, Lily was preparing for college, trying very hard to act normal. Dorm shopping, supply lists, mini fridge debates, Target runs. But I noticed things. She checked locks more often, jumped when the doorbell rang unexpectedly, looked tense when unknown numbers called. That may have been the part I hated most. Grant had not just attacked me. He had stolen some part of my daughter's sense of safety. And I would never forgive that. 2 weeks later, Daniel called. Mediation is scheduled. Good. Bring everything. Everything? Yes. Texts, voicemails, screenshots, welfare check documentation, timeline notes, his mother's messages, every manipulative contact. I asked, do we actually have enough? Daniel was quiet for a moment, then said, people like Grant think damage lives in isolated moments. I waited. They forget patterns tell the real story. For the first time since graduation, I thought maybe he had finally pushed too far. Mediation took place in the least dramatic room imaginable. Gray walls, harsh fluorescent lighting, a conference table that looked like it had hosted 1,000 dull insurance disputes. No courtroom theatrics. No dramatic music. No cinematic justice. Just paperwork and emotionally exhausted adults trying to reduce years of damage into legal categories. Grant was already there when Daniel and I arrived. And annoyingly, he looked good. Fresh haircut, pressed shirt, calm posture. The kind of composure that suggested he thought presentation could still rescue character. His attorney sat beside him. Expensive watch, expensive suit, the kind of smile that had probably billed many hours. Grant looked at me, smiled. That same polished expression he used whenever he wanted outsiders to believe he was reasonable. And something surprised me. I felt nothing. Not anger, not heartbreak, nothing. Daniel leaned slightly toward me. Good. I glanced at him. What? You don't look emotional. I almost smiled. Apparently that matters? Very. The mediator entered, Elaine Foster. 60s, sharp eyes, calm demeanor. The kind of woman who had likely seen every flavor of manipulation and no longer found any of them impressive. She explained the process. Everyone would speak. Offers would be reviewed. Compromise would be explored. Standard procedure. Then Grant's attorney began. And honestly, it was almost impressive in a deeply irritating way. He painted Grant as a devoted long-term partner, blindsided by an emotionally reactive woman, overly attached to her adult daughter. There were phrases like hostile separation, exclusionary family dynamic, escalated emotional responses. I nearly laughed. Manipulative people love formal language. It lets cruelty wear a tie. Then came the financial demands, reduced from the original absurdity, but still ambitious. Support, asset participation, relocation assistance, residual obligations. Daniel took notes without expression. Then it was his turn. He stood, opened a thick folder, neatly tabbed, and the atmosphere shifted almost immediately. He began calmly. Rather than arguments, I'd prefer documented chronology. Elaine nodded. Grant's attorney adjusted in his chair. Daniel started with graduation. The refusal to applaud. The comment. The witness statement from the woman seated beside us. Yes, someone had provided a written statement. Because decency still exists in surprising places. Grant's attorney objected mildly. Elaine allowed it. Then Daniel moved forward, Lily being blamed directly. Texts sent to my daughter. Manipulative emotional pressure. Printed screenshots slid across the table. Elaine read quietly. I watched her expression change. Subtly, but enough. Then Diane's voicemail. Transcribed, including another man's child. That landed exactly the way it deserved to. Grant shifted visibly. Then came the welfare check report. Official documentation. Case closure. Time-stamped. Retaliatory escalation. Elaine's expression hardened in a way that required no interpretation. Grant's attorney looked significantly less comfortable now. Then Daniel placed down the original demand letter. The ridiculous one. Half the house. Lily's college fund. Long-term support. Relocation money. All contrasted against documented conduct. Daniel never raised his voice. That made it worse. Controlled dismantling is far more devastating than shouting. Finally, he said, "Patterns matter." Silence. A meaningful one. Elaine looked at Grant's attorney. That brief glance said more than a speech could. His attorney leaned toward him, whispered something. Grant shook his head immediately. Still stubborn. Still convinced performance could outperform evidence. We broke for separate discussions. Elaine entered our room first. Saturday. Folded her hands. "Your documentation is strong." Daniel nodded. I stayed quiet. "Realistically," she continued, "I do not see a favorable long-term support outcome for him." That was satisfying. Not because I wanted revenge, because reality was finally being acknowledged. There's a difference. Hours passed. Offers shifted. Numbers moved. Grant resisted. Apparently cried in the other room at one point. Claimed abandonment. Claimed betrayal. Claimed he had given years to this relationship. And maybe in his mind that was true. But time invested does not erase harm inflicted. Eventually Elaine returned. Same calm face. "The recommendation is final. Terms. The house remained mine. Lily's college fund untouched. Joint savings split evenly. Grant kept the Honda. I absorbed the remaining cosign balance to sever that connection permanently. Temporary transitional support. Limited. Reduced. Finite." Daniel leaned toward me. "This is good." I nodded. Because it was. Not emotionally triumphant, but clean. And sometimes peace looks less like victory and more like an exit. Then came the strange part. Grant requested to speak to me privately. Absolutely not. Elaine suggested supervised conversation. Daniel looked at me. "Your choice." I agreed. 5 minutes. That was all. Grant entered, sat across from me. For a brief second, he looked smaller, tired, almost human. Then he spoke. "I loved you." I said nothing. "You're really doing this." Still fascinating, as if consequences were something happening to him instead of something created by him. "You blamed my daughter." His jaw tightened. "She poisoned everything." And there it was. Still, even now, no accountability. Only redirected blame. "You triggered that welfare check." I did not. Lie. "Your ex got involved." Silence. Interesting silence. Then, Tessa was trying to help. I stared at him. Help? She understands difficult women. That sentence killed whatever microscopic softness might have remained. I stood immediately. Conversation over. He said my name as I reached the door. I turned once, and he said, "You'll end up alone." It was such a predictable line it almost felt boring. People who cannot control you often try to curse your future instead. I looked at him calmly. Better alone than with someone who hurts children. Then I walked out. He signed that afternoon. Not gracefully, but he signed. On the drive home, I expected triumph. Closure. Some cinematic rush of relief. Instead, I felt exhausted. Like surviving surgery. Necessary pain. Not victory. That night, Lily asked, "How did it go?" I looked at her. "We're almost done." She nodded. Then asked, "Can we still get the mini fridge?" I laughed for the first time in weeks. "Yes." "Even the one with the separate freezer?" "Push your luck." She grinned. And that tiny normal moment healed something legal documents never could. I thought that was the ending. It wasn't. The dispute was officially resolved on a Tuesday morning. No dramatic courtroom speech. No emotional showdown. No last-minute confession worthy of a movie script. Just paperwork. A mediator and a clerk finalizing everything. A clerk calling names in a tone that suggested she had seen every possible version of human disappointment. Then signatures. Stamped documents. Finished. That was it. It's strange how something that consumes your life for months can end with administrative efficiency. No music. No emotional punctuation. Just done. I walked outside expecting something cinematic. Relief. Freedom. Closure. Instead, the sun was shining. People were buying coffee. Someone nearby was laughing into a phone. Traffic moved exactly as it always had. And somehow, that felt stranger than heartbreak. Because private devastation rarely changes the outside world. Life keeps moving with insulting confidence. 3 weeks later, Lily started college. Move-in day was chaos. The good kind. Storage bins. Extension cords. Target receipts long enough to qualify as literature. Bedding that came with instructions apparently written by someone who actively disliked humanity. I rented a minivan because somehow none of it fit in my SUV. Lily tried very hard to act composed. That specific 18-year-old performance where they insist they're grown while quietly panicking. Her roommate seemed nice, terrified, appropriate. I assembled furniture badly, hung fairy lights crooked. Pretended I understood dorm microwave regulations. Normal motherhood. Beautifully ordinary motherhood. And after everything, ordinary felt almost luxurious. Then came the goodbye. We stood outside her dorm room while the hallway buzzed with awkward parents and overexcited freshmen. Then the noise seemed to fade. Lily hugged me tightly. Longer than usual, then pulled back. Mom? Yeah? I know what happened. My stomach dropped. What? At graduation. I stared at her. She gave me a small, sad smile. The woman sitting next to you told her daughter. Her daughter told people at school. Of course. Small-town gossip travels faster than internet service. I swallowed. Lily? No, let me say this. So I did. She took a breath. I heard you stand up. I blinked. What? From the podium. That hit harder than anything else. She continued quietly. I didn't know exactly what happened. I just heard movement. Voices. Then I saw you leave and come back. My throat tightened. And I knew. Knew what? That you were protecting me. That sentence broke me in the gentlest possible way. Not pain. Something softer. Something deeper. Because children remember far less of what we explain than what we demonstrate. She looked down for a moment, then back at me. I didn't say anything because I didn't know how. I was already crying, completely without dignity. Lily laughed softly through tears. I just wanted you to know I've always known you'd choose me. There are sentences that rearrange something permanent inside you. That was one of them. I am a 44-year-old woman. I have buried a husband, raised a child alone, managed teams, handled legal warfare, held myself together through things I never imagined surviving. And that sentence nearly took my knees out. I hugged her again. Hard. Always, I whispered. She pulled back slightly. Even if it costs you things? I looked at her immediately. Especially then. Because love that becomes negotiable under pressure was never really love. She nodded slowly, then smiled. You know what's weird? What? I think I want to become a lawyer. I laughed through tears. Seriously? Watching Daniel professionally destroy Grant with paperwork was kind of inspiring. That made me laugh for real. You would be terrifying. She grinned. Thank you. Then added, That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. We both laughed. And I left before I became the sobbing mother, creating a scene in a freshman hallway. Which, to be fair, I absolutely was. I made it to the minivan. Barely. Sat there for 15 minutes trying to breathe like a functioning adult. Eventually, life settled. Not perfectly, but honestly. Grant moved in with his mother for a while. Then, according to mutual acquaintances, somewhere smaller, Tessa disappeared once legal consequences became real. Later, mutual friends confirmed what I had already suspected. Tessa had reappeared long before the legal fight officially began. A shocking development. Diane sent a few passive-aggressive texts. Hope you're happy. He deserved better. Blocked. Long overdue. Financially, it hurt. Legal fees. Car payoff. Temporary support obligations. The kind of numbers that make your bank account physically offensive to look at. But peace costs something. Chaos usually costs more. Lily's scholarship and college fund covered freshman year. Loans would probably come later. Manageable. I picked up extra consulting work. Longer hours. Temporary sacrifices. Worth it. Then slowly, life became lighter. Lily called twice a week. Usually Tuesdays and Sundays. Updates about classes. Dorm drama. Dining hall food reviews. Apparently breakfast burritos were an actual hate crime. I loved every second. Then one Saturday, months later, I sat on my porch doing absolutely nothing. Coffee in hand. No legal emails. No hostile texts. No fear when the doorbell rang. Just sunlight. Stillness. The healthy kind. And I realized something. Graduation wasn't the day I lost a relationship. It was the day I finally saw the truth about one. There's a difference. People still occasionally ask whether I forgive Grant. The honest answer? Number. Maybe someday. Maybe not. Because this wasn't ordinary cruelty. Cruelty can come from weakness. This was escalation, calculation, weaponization. He targeted my daughter, then my stability, then the system itself. That changes the shape of forgiveness. And forgiveness, contrary to popular advice, is not mandatory. Sometimes peace comes from acceptance, not absolution. I still think about graduation sometimes. Not the ugly parts, not the Uber, not the whispers. Just Lily at the podium, index cards shaking, scanning the crowd, finding me. That nervous little smile asking the same silent question children ask in 100 different ways. Are you watching? Yes, I was. I stood up for her. I protected her. I was the loudest person clapping when she crossed that stage. And in the end, that's the only part that truly mattered.